I am more excited than I even thought I would be to have these two figures in hand today. Anakin Skywalker from Phantom Menace was the very first figure that I ever purchased. My mom took me to Walmart at 6 a.m. and I had saved up my birthday money, and that was the only figure I came home with. But Phantom Menace and the toys in that line were the first thing that I ever collected, the first fandom that I was really into, and it really just kickstarted this whole thing that has become a big part of my life now in my adulthood. And I didn't realize how strong my attachment to Phantom Menace specifically was until I got Jar Jar Binks a couple years ago, and opening that figure just really took me back to being 10 years old, and I'm feeling a lot of that same nostalgia today. These out of the box look really great. I'm actually really shocked that we got these figures at this point in the Black Series, especially young Anakin. I just didn't think that was one that would ever do well, and I won't be too surprised to see him on clearance. And considering that the first Geonosis Padme still goes for under retail on Amazon all these years later, I'm really shocked to see both of these, but I'm really happy about it. The first thing I notice is that his face is a little bit shiny and the head is actually quite loose, but overall the sculpt looks great. The paint work does look a little bit plain, so we are going to actually adjust that towards the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. It does also feel like there are some accessories lacking here. I think the pod racer or the Naboo pilot helmet would have been an amazing addition, and when I heard they were making this figure, I just assumed that would be a given. The articulation is kind of what you'd expect of a 2024 figure. We're actually missing butterfly joints on this figure, although I wouldn't say I necessarily miss it. And we don't have the thigh cut here, and just kind of like around 90 at the knee and the typical ankle swivel. There are a little bit of balance issues that I will also cover in just a second, but overall this feels quite nice, and proportionately I think it's perfect. So let's look at Padme here. When I first saw photos of this, I thought that her torso looked way too small. I felt like the figure itself just looked a little bit disproportionate, but seeing it in person, it looks great, and the gold trim is a really nice shiny touch. The skirt piece is attached to the belt, and then we've got a little decent amount of articulation at the waist here, and then the elbow is kind of, again, what you would expect. Still, I don't think there's butterfly joints on this, but I have to say that even without them, she can get really close together in that Macarena pose. I know 100% that I had Anakin as a kid, but I was trying to remember if I had Padme in this dress, and then once I saw that hair, it was like such a flood of memories coming back. I don't know why that specifically just really triggered the memory of having this figure as a kid. I was a bit surprised to see the weathering on the boots here. There is just like a little bit of that gray on there, just adds a little bit of depth to it. Nothing too fancy, and I guess the rest of the figure is supposed to be quite clean. And the skirt actually doesn't really hinder the articulation at all. It's just enough out of the way of the legs. If you want to get her into this like fancy gun wielding pose here, you can. The skirt just kind of moves itself out of the way. So that was pretty nice to see, because you just really never know what you're going to get with a figure like this, but definitely no traffic cone syndrome here. Let's look at some of the accessories that come. Anakin is not empty-handed. He does come with his backpack, which is a nice addition. I was a little concerned about the quality of the strap, thinking that it might be a little bit too loose. It kind of almost feels like it's gonna discolor over time, when you kind of bend a joint too far and it turns white. That doesn't seem to be an issue here though, although it does feel a bit tight, but depending on how you use it, as long as you're not really posing it every single day for a year, I think it'll last. And it does actually fit quite perfectly on his back, which was nice to see. You can also just throw one strap over the shoulder like it looks on the box and how he is in the poster, but the hand doesn't really get up far enough to grab that. There's no double jointed elbow here, which I'm glad that there's not, but it would have been cool to be able to do that pose. Because the backpack is solid, it does kind of add a lot of weight to the back there, and it's a little bit tricky to get him standing straight. I do like a little bit of a bend here as if he's walking, and then that will definitely give a little bit of a counterbalance, but we'll play with that a little bit throughout the video. Padme actually comes with two weapons here. We have the gun that I think fires the little grappling hook, and with how much we see the same weapons repeated over and over again in the Black Series, it's really exciting to just have a new sculpt. And then we have the chromed out one here, which is adjustable actually, in case you want to have it displayed like that. And because it is so small, she actually comes with an alternate hand that holds it snugly, and I was very happy with the fit here. I think this is the same from the first release, but it's not going anywhere. And I did have a little bit of trouble getting the other hand in. It separates pretty easily, but getting this other one in without heating it, I found that it was actually quite difficult, and the wrist peg, or the wrist hinge, was so loose that it kept kind of moving out of the way as I tried to get it in here. I was afraid it was going to break, so I ended up hitting it with a cheap heat gun that I got on Amazon. I'll have a link for this below. Definitely a safer way to get things on and off your figures without worrying about breaking parts. And I actually have no notes on this figure. I don't think there's anything I would change. Eventually I might have have Tim or Frederick or one of my friends do a custom paint job on her face just to really take it up a notch, but overall I'm pretty happy with how this looks, and she's not even shiny. So I'm going to do some fixes to Anakin here. I'm going to take this loose head, it pops right off, just put a tiny bit of black tack at the base of that neck peg, and that takes care of that for us. I'm also going to hit him with a little bit of a matte spray here using my Mr. Super Clear outside. Make sure you're properly ventilated and have a mask and goggles, all the typical protections you would use if you were using spray paint. I will have an affiliate link to that below. It really helps with that shine. Let's get into some size comparisons here with Obi-Wan from SH Figuarts and the Black Series battle droid that I custom painted to be that pink security droid like we see in the very first scene of the movie. Here are the Black Series Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, the original release of the Black Series Darth Maul and Jar Jar Binks. Keep in mind that Natalie Portman is only 5'3" and was a teenager when they were shooting these movies, so she looks a little bit smaller than I have in my headcanon, but I guess this is quite correct. So I'm going to tape up Anakin's legs here because I think the color's okay. I just want to kind of hit his upper tunic, and I'm using a heat gun to get rid of his hands and his neck. I'm going to just stick that neck peg back on the head while it's still warm, and that'll just prevent any accidents. I don't have to be as careful. We're going to use this Vallejo Wash, which will also be linked below. I just thought this color was going to be perfect to get his outfit a little bit dirty and a little bit more like yellowy brown. I have a few weathering tutorials on my channel that are about over 10 minutes each. It's if you want like a little bit more of an in-depth version of this, but I'm basically just covering the whole figure and then using the brush as it's a little bit more dry to pull off the excess moisture there and just kind of get rid of the parts where it's like gooping up a little bit. And then I'm just taking a cheap sponge and just dabbing it to get rid of all the excess moisture. And then I'm kind of like brushing it across the raised areas here to kind of give it a dry brushing effect where it's going to be a little bit lighter on the parts of the fabric that are sticking out. I'm going to hit it with the heat gun just to really get rid of any excess moisture there. I'm going to repeat the same process on the legs here. You can see how beautifully that wash just sits into all the crevices and you're just left with the raised surfaces looking a little bit lighter. That's exactly what you want it to look like. And seeing this, I'm wondering if these legs could be used for a Tusken child from the Book of Boba Fett. Repeating the same process here with the sponge and getting him put back together here. Stay tuned to the end of the video for the big reveal. And the only thing I'm going to change on Padme's is I'm going to hit the gun with a little bit of chrome. I'm brushing it on quite lightly here because I don't want to see any like paintbrush lines, and I also just don't want it to goop up since it's such a small piece. So I'm just kind of like doing a lot of really thin light coats until it just looks nice and shiny. I avoided painting the handle because I just don't want it to rub off onto the hand, even though it's never really going to leave this hand. And then surprise, we're going to do a little bit of a Phantom Menace shelf series here, starting with the OOM9 battle droid that I custom painted, and this is the binoculars from the Bandai model kit. Then we have Jar Jar Binks holding a pit droid that I repainted. This Boss Nass was sculpted by the Glowing Ghost, and the files are available on my Patreon. This is resin printed, and then Frederick's Figures did the amazing paint job on here, so happy to have him in the collection. We have the Elite Series TC14, which just has a lot more of a chrome shine than we see with any Black Series figures. Then we have Mace Windu with a resin printed robe. The files are also from my Patreon. It's still got a little bit of flex to it, but you do have to repaint the arms, so this is like a big choice if you want to display it this way, but I really like the way it looks. I'm choosing the Figuarts Obi-Wan Kenobi here. I think the likeness on the face is a little bit better, and overall the figure just looks a little bit more premium. I'm also going with the Figuarts Darth Maul. I think that one just, the articulation's a lot more fun to mess around with, and just overall looks a little bit better. Then we have this Watto that I resin printed and was painted for me by Tim's Toys. I don't know if we're ever going to get Watto in the Black Series, but the fact that we got Kid Anakin gives me a lot more hope. The same security battle droid that we saw earlier. This sculpt is so nice, and just little bits of paint to bring out all of those details look so nice. I found this file of Sebulba online, and I resin printed and painted it myself. The Black Series R2 is a fine addition to this collection because of how nice and clean he is, like he is in the Phantom Menace. I think the SH Figuarts Qui-Gon head looks a little bit too young. I'm waiting on a custom head for this one, but the body I think looks so nice, and it just looks a lot more premium. This Captain Panaka kit goes on a Grand Moff Tarkin body, and this face was printed for me by Frederick's Figures, sculpted by Blue D, and the body was sculpted by the Glowing Ghost. Also files all on my Patreon. You may remember this young lady from earlier. And here is Anakin with the dark wash on the chest. It's looking a little bit more splotchy than I wanted it. I might keep fiddling with this, but I think the legs look great, and overall just definitely an improvement from just like the solid color that everything was before. I need to sit with this one for a moment to see if this is kind of like the final version that I'm going to keep. And then the SH Figuarts Yoda on the Jedi Council chair, just such an iconic part of the Phantom Menace. So give this video a like if you did enjoy it. Please subscribe if you are new to the channel. I'm always getting up to the moment Black Series reviews. When I first started collecting a few years ago, I never thought I would have a Phantom Menace 6-inch collection like this. Did have to bring in a lot of customs, but it is so nice to see Anakin and Padme finally coming to the line here. Let me know in the comments below what you think of these figures and what you think of the modifications that I did. Did I ruin the figure? Did I make it better? As always, thank you for watching. Here are some other videos that you might enjoy, and I will see you all next time.